This happened a few months ago. I was 32 and working my usual night shift as a janitor at St. James Hospital. I've been there for almost 2 years, juggling my job while trying to finish my nursing degree. The night shifts were perfect. It was quiet, and I could study in between cleaning. That on my third night, things started to change. I was pushing my cart down a dim hallway, the flickering fluorescent lights above me unsettling. The strong smell of antiseptic filled the air, and all I could hear was the squeaky wheel of my cart. Then, I thought I heard a faint noise coming from the pediatric ward. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a loose pipe or my overactive imagination. Days rolled by, and the strange sounds didn't stop. This time, it was a tapping noise, rhythmic and unnerving. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stood at the pediatric ward's door. I just stared, waiting for something to happen. Maybe I should have left, but I didn't want to believe anything sinister was happening. Suddenly, the tapping stopped. The silence was thick. My heart raced and I turned to get back to work. That night, whispers began low and indistinct. It felt like they were right next to me, but I could never catch the words. I told myself I was just tired and needed more sleep, but the whispers grew louder each night. It felt frantic, like they were trying to warn me. I started noticing my cleaning supplies moving. I could have sworn I left my mop out, but found it inexplicably in the supply closet. Am I losing it? I wondered. One night, I found myself standing at the end of the hall again, near the pediatric ward. Then I heard it, clear as day. Children's voices whispering, "Emily, help us." My heart was pounding in my chest. My hands were clammy. I felt frozen but drawn to the whispers. I stepped closer, feeling curiosity and fear mix. The voices swirled around me, like they were in my head. I could barely breathe. I was the only one in the hospital, and an icy chill crawled up my legs. Felt wrong. I was terrified but stayed. Then I turned around. Nothing was there. Just silence. But the whispers returned, now sounding desperate. I wanted to scream but couldn't find my voice. What was happening? I kept walking down that corridor, my mind racing. Felt like I was being watched, like something was hiding in the dark. And then, once more, I heard it. Emily, what I heard next still haunts me, echoing in my mind long after I left the hospital that night. The next night, I went back to work, anxious but determined to face whatever was haunting the hospital. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but it clung to me like a shadow. As I entered the building, the usual antiseptic smell hit me, and the silence felt heavier than before. I started with the hallway. My cart squeaked like it was warning me, but I pressed on. The pediatric ward loomed ahead, its door slightly ajar. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn back, but another part was drawn to those voices. I wondered if I was alone this time. As I pushed the door open, I could feel the temperature drop. It hit me like a wave, a bone-deep chill that settled in my stomach. I stepped inside, clutching my mop like a weapon. The room was empty, but it felt alive, like a muted heartbeat pulsing under the surface. Then I noticed something odd. The toys in the play area were arranged in a circle, each one facing inward. I hadn't seen them like that before. My heart raced again as I crept closer. Felt wrong, unnatural. I scanned the room, waiting for a whisper or a laugh, but nothing came. That's when I heard it. A soft giggle, a child's voice, clear and playful. Panic surged through me, but I stood still, straining to hear more. Emily, it was there again, and I knew it wasn't in my head. I could feel my palms sweating, the air thickening around me. I turned to leave, but the door swung shut as if pushed by an unseen hand. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my ears now. "Please," I whispered, desperation creeping into my voice. "Let me out." Nothing happened for a moment, but then I felt a presence behind me. I slowly turned, half expecting to see a ghostly figure standing there. Instead, the room was empty. The giggles had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. Fingers trembling, I tried to push the door open again, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. Just then, I noticed something at my feet, a small, worn-out teddy bear. It hadn't been there before. I bent down, my heart racing. On one paw, it had a name stitched in faded thread. Lily. Suddenly, I remembered the stories about the children who had been admitted here, some never leaving. The feeling of dread tightened its grip on me. If this teddy belonged to one of them, what did it mean? The whispers returned then, sounding furious, echoing through the room. Help us. I froze. What were they asking for? My breathing quickened, and I felt lightheaded. The door was still locked, and the voices grew louder, more frantic. Then, something cold touched my shoulder and I spun around, nearly knocking the teddy bear away. But there was no one there, just darkness closing in. Emily! Help! The voices cried again, and I couldn't help but take a step back, my heart racing. I needed to escape, but now it felt like something was pulling me in. I had to get out, but no matter how hard I pushed, the door didn't budge. Then, I saw it in the corner of my eye, a dark shape moving. I turned, and just like that, everything went dark. When the darkness faded, I was still in the pediatric ward, but the atmosphere had shifted. A dim light flickered above me. The sound of the buzzing fluorescent lights mixed with the soft cries echoing from somewhere deep in the hospital. I was no longer alone. My skin prickled as I sensed the presence wasn't just in my mind. Panicking, I scanned the room for a way out. The door remained sealed, a firm barrier against my growing dread. The teddy bear lay at my feet, now feeling more like a warning than a relic of childhood. I picked it up hesitantly. Lily, I whispered. Who were you? Across the room, something caught my eye. A shadow flitted past the play area, moving too quickly to discern. My heart raced again, pounding in my ears. I wanted to follow it, to solve this mystery, but fear kept me rooted in place. My resolve faltered. What if it was something dark? What if it wanted to hurt me? Help, Emily. The voice was weaker now, almost pleading. It pierced through the fog of my fear and ignited a flicker of courage. I couldn't ignore this in good conscience. As I stepped closer to where the shadow had disappeared, the whispers changed, morphing into something coherent, desperate. Find us, Emily, please. I steadied myself, clutching the teddy bear tightly. I had to find the source of those voices. Maybe if I listened closer, something would reveal itself to me. I made my way toward the corner of the room where the shadows seemed to pool in the dim light. Behind a colorful curtain, I found a small hidden space, more toys, more echoes of childhood. But something else caught my attention. A series of drawings taped up on the wall. They were done by kids, I assumed, scrawled in vibrant colors, yet the images felt off. They depicted children playing, but their faces were distorted, twisted in fear. One of them wore a red dress. Was that Emily? As I examined the drawings, a cold draft swept through the room, and the giggling returned, but this time it felt sinister, mocking. You shouldn't be here, Emily, they sang, light and airy, but with an edge that made my skin crawl. That I stepped back, but my foot caught on something, sending me sprawling. My hands scrambled to find purchase, and I caught sight of a cabinet. My heart sank as I realized it was slightly ajar. Inside, I found a stack of old, yellowed papers wrapped in string. I tugged it free just as the air deepened around me, oppressive and heavy. Help us! The voices screamed. Shaking the very air I breathed, I held the papers tight, knowing I had stirred something. Whatever was behind this had noticed my intrusion. The door rattled violently, as if the spirits within were trying to escape. Emily! I dropped the papers, instinct kicking in as I rushed toward the exit. But as I turned, everything shifted again. The darkness thickened, and I felt as if I were being watched. Before I could react, a small figure emerged from the shadows, barely illuminated by the flickering light. Her name was stitched on her dress in faded thread. Emily. My breath hitched, and the world around me narrowed. Was this the same child from the drawings? The reality of the situation hit me harder than any ghost story could. I turned to run, but the weight of Emily's gaze paralyzed me. I needed to escape. I had to know if I could help the trapped souls, or would I be just another voice calling for help? I stood frozen, staring at Emily. The flickering light stretched the shadows around her, and for a moment, I could see past her faded dress into the depths of her hollow eyes. She looked so small, so lost. My instinct told me to run, but something deeper held me there. "Help us," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper, and my heart cracked a little more. It was a plea, not a threat. "Who?" I managed to croak out. "Who do you need help from?" But even as I asked, I felt the weight of the room shift again, and the air thickened around me. Just then, a distant sound echoed from down the corridor. It was a low moan, like the suffering of something trapped. My pulse quickened. What if I wasn't alone in this part of the hospital? Emily. I wanted to reach out to her, to touch the small hand that hung by her side, but fear poured ice through my veins. I was torn between the urge to flee and the urge to stay. Suddenly, the lights above flickered wildly. Emily's expression twisted in fear, and she took a small step back. "The whispers don't like visitors. They get angry." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "What whispers?" I asked, my voice shaky. I needed answers. "They know you're here. You have to go," she said urgently, her tone turning grave. I glanced back toward the door. Outside, the moaning continued, looping like an entranced lullaby. Fear gripped me, and desperation clawed at my throat. "Wait, I can help," I blurted, and I was surprised by my own conviction. "Tell me what I need to do, please." Emily hesitated, biting her lip as if weighing her options. "You have to find the drawings. The ones that hold the truth. Then they will be quiet." Just then, a loud crash echoed from somewhere within the room. A sudden chaos that shattered the fragile tension. My eyes darted to the cabinet, now swinging open, spilling papers onto the floor. The instant distraction forced Emily further back into the shadows. "Emily!" I cried out, but my voice barely cut through the unsettling crackle in the air. From the depths of the shadows, whispers turned into shouts, urgent and angry. "Leave now. You should not be here." I stumbled back, the fever pitch of dissonance overwhelming me. I turned toward the noise behind the cabinet. My mind raced. The drawings? Was this what she meant? Resolute, fear pulsing through me, I knelt and began hastily collecting the papers scattered across the floor. Each one was more disturbing than the last quick sketches of children. Faces twisted in fear, just like the drawings on the wall. I flipped over the last paper. That S when I saw it. A name, scrawled hastily at the bottom. Lily. The chaos suddenly halted. A shadow loomed large behind me, and I knew whatever was lurking wouldn't be friendly. My instinct screamed at me to run, but a sickening realization dawned. I had stirred something more than just memories. I turned slowly to face the source of the cold dread, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I wasn't alone anymore. Whatever existed in this space had finally come out to play. I barely caught my breath. The shadow pressed closer, and the air turned frigid. I took a shaky step back, my eyes straining to see into the dark. "Emily?" I called out, hoping she would reappear, but the shadows swallowed her voice, leaving only silence. The looming shadow shifted. I could barely make out its shape, a figure with sharp angles that seemed to sap the warmth from the room. I held the papers tightly, half afraid they might slip from my grasp like sand. "Who is there?" I managed to shout, but my voice trembled despite my bravado. The shadow didn't answer. Instead, it moved with a deliberate slowness, creeping toward me. I glanced back at the torn sketches littering the ground. The name Lily screamed in my mind. Who was she? Was she the source of whatever I had awakened? Suddenly, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Leave, leave," they coiled around me, burrowing into my thoughts, urging me to escape. I fought the urge to obey. I needed to understand what was happening, but I felt the ground slipping away beneath me. With a surge of adrenaline, I ripped my gaze away from the shadow, focusing on the cabinet. The drawings, I thought again, desperate to uncover what Emily meant. I scrambled to gather more pages, but the shadow loomed closer. "Get away," I shouted, the panic rising. My hand brushed against something metallic on the floor, a pen. I seized it, ready to defend myself. But how could I fight a darkness that defied explanation? The shadow laughed, a chilling sound that echoed back in distorted layers. "You dare?" it hissed. Incredibly, my fear sharpened into clarity. "I'm not afraid of you," I yelled back, even as my heart raced. I turned to charge at the cabinet, rifling through the remaining sketches littered in my path. One paper caught my eye, a different drawing, this time showing children clutching each other, their eyes wide with fear. Underneath them, a familiar symbol, a crooked spiral. I recognized that symbol from the drawings on the wall. "Lily," I whispered, the pieces beginning to fit. "You were trying to warn me." The shadow lunged, its movement quick and erratic. I ducked just in time, scrambling for the door, my pulse surging. "I have to find you," I cried out, half to the figures in the drawings, half to myself. The whispers turned to shrieks, a cacophony that sliced through the air, almost deafening. I felt their cold breath against my neck, urging me back, urging me to stay. I burst through the door, heart racing, and found myself in the dimly lit corridor of the hospital. But it felt different somehow. The walls seemed to pulse, suffused with a dark energy. And at the end of the hall, the flickering lights cast an eerie glow on something or someone standing there. I couldn't stop to think. My legs moved on their own, adrenaline propelling me forward. Was it Lily, or was it something worse? Then, everything went dark. I blinked, but the darkness refused to fade. I stood utterly still, straining to hear anything beyond the ringing silence. My mind raced, replaying the shadow's malevolent laughter. Was this it? Had I slipped into some twisted nightmare? Slowly, my eyes adjusted, and dim outlines emerged. I was still in the hospital corridor, but it felt like being inside a living thing, walls breathing, shadows shifting. Panic clawed at my throat, and I took a cautious step forward. "Lily? Emily?" My voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. In the distance, I caught a glimpse of movement. A figure flickered under the dim lights. I squinted, trying to see clearly. My heart thumped painfully in my chest as I approached. It wasn't Lily. It was a child, a small girl in a pale dress, her hair long and tangled. She turned, locking eyes with me. Her expression was one of pure terror. "Help me," she whispered, her voice faint and tremulous. "Where did you come from?" I sputtered, 100 questions drowning my thoughts. "What's happening here?" She pointed down the hallway, but before I could follow her gaze, the air grew thick with the same chilling whispers. "Leave, leave," they filled the corridor, like the flutter of restless spirits. I felt the shadows creep closer, drawing nearer like a tide of darkness. "Wait," I shouted at the girl, but she had vanished, leaving only the faint echo of her plea. Confusion rushed in, intertwining with fear. I remembered the drawing of children huddled together, and dread sunk its teeth into me. I hesitated, then moved forward, retracing her path. The shadows lurked at the edges of my vision, twisting and swirling in the dim light. The whispers morphed into a hive of voices, each demanding action but contradicting the last. "Go back. Leave now. Find her." I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to drown them out. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated from one of the nearby rooms. I jumped, every nerve ending screaming for me to flee. But I couldn't. What if it was another clue? Or something worse? I steadied my breathing and crept toward the sound, my grip tightening around the pen I still clutched. I pushed the door open cautiously. The room was empty, yet it felt alive, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. Papers were strewn across a desk, just like in the other room. The sight clenched the pit of my stomach. I caught a glimpse of a familiar drawing, another child, not unlike the one I had seen, with those same wide, terrified eyes. Then I noticed something shiny on the floor beneath the desk. Bending down, I picked up a metal bracelet. My breath caught. Engraved on it was the name Lily. A soft creaking sound echoed behind me. I turned, heart racing, and froze. The door slowly creaked shut of its own accord. Panic flooded my veins. I wasn't alone anymore. Something else was in the room with me. I stood frozen, my breath shallow as fear gripped me. The door had clicked shut, and I felt the temperature drop around me. I couldn't see anything behind me, but I could sense it creeping closer. It was a crushing weight, like a storm pressing down just out of sight. Then there was a rustling noise, faint but unmistakable. I turned slowly, trying to make sense of the shadows that danced in the periphery of my vision. "Hello?" My voice shook with uncertainty. No answer. Just the unsettling rustle, getting louder, as if something was shifting in the dark. My instinct screamed at me to run. I was in a hospital, yet it felt like a trap. An icy fear clawed at my spine as I focused on the shadows beneath the desk. I was no longer alone, and I had to know what was there. I took a hesitant step back, and suddenly a figure emerged, dark and twisted. My heart slammed against my chest as I took a sharp breath, readying myself to bolt. But just as quickly, the figure vanished, sliding back into the darkness like a ghost. I blinked, unsure if I had imagined it, but the rustling continued. Gathering what little courage I had left, I took a step closer to the desk. The bracelet felt heavy in my hand. It burned against my skin as if it held a secret meant only for me. I dropped it to the floor, hoping that noise would mask the sound of my trembling. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me in a frantic crescendo. "Find her. Save her." The voices shifted from eerie to pleading. I was lost in confusion, struggling to comprehend who I was meant to save. But I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. My gaze shot back to the door. Still lay shut, but I couldn't remember locking it. Why would it close on its own? A cold finger of dread traced my spine. I needed to escape this room. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the far end of the corridor, jolting me out of my thoughts. Instinctively, I turned towards the sound. It felt like a rallying call to move forward. I dashed toward the doorway, my breath hitching with every step as I reached the door. It jerked open, revealing a figure standing in the hallway. It was the girl in the pale dress. Her eyes were glazed, filled with an urgency I hadn't seen before. "Please, you have to follow me," she urged, and I felt my heart race wildly in response. I hesitated, fear wrapping around me like barbed wire. But before I could answer, the air shifted again, oppressive and thick. The whispers morphed into shrieks, as if warning me to stay put. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, and shadows pooled around the doorway, blocking her escape. Panic surged through me, and I moved without thinking. I stepped past the girl toward the unknown, determined to confront whatever was lurking in the dark. There was no going back now. As I pushed past her, the whispers intensified, becoming incomprehensible screams. I realized that stepping forward could lead to salvation or damnation. I chose to move ahead, cringing as the shadows grew heavier. My gut screamed a warning, but I didn't have the luxury of choice. "I'll find you, Lily," I yelled into the darkness, clenching my fists around the bracelet. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, disoriented and gasping. The air was cold, but I couldn't tell how long I'd been unconscious. My heart raced as I blinked against the darkness, struggling to remember what had just happened. Shadows were everywhere, like dark tendrils waiting for me to slip up. That I was on the floor now, the cool tiles biting into my legs. The bracelet lay a few feet away, glinting ominously in the faint light filtering from the hallway. I scrambled toward it, my palms sweating as I shot glances around the room. Felt like something lurked just out of sight, watching me. As I reached for the bracelet, a low, guttural noise echoed through the hallway. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, part growl, part whisper, and it made my skin crawl. I clutched the bracelet tight in my palm, feeling its unnerving warmth seep into my skin. Panic surged again. I needed to get out. The last thing I remembered was the girl Lily urging me to follow her. But would she still be there? Were the whispers urging me to stay or to run? I stood up slowly, my legs shaky beneath me. Each step echoed in the silence, but the growling hadn't returned. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against it, straining to catch any sound. The corridor seemed empty, and fear coiled tightly in my stomach. I pushed the door open, creaked almost like a warning, The hallway stretched out before me, dim and claustrophobic. I stepped out, glancing both ways. There was no sign of the girl, just a long line of doors, each cloaked in shadow. Then I heard it again, louder this time. "Help me." The voice was weak, strained, and it sent an icy rush through me. It wasn't just the whispers anymore. Someone was calling for help, and I felt an overwhelming urge to follow it. The sound came from the left, beyond the last door at the end of the hallway. I hesitated. The growling was gone, but the oppressive silence felt like a weight against my back. I steeled myself and moved cautiously down the corridor, the flickering lights casting distorted shapes that danced across the walls as I approached the door. A sudden burst of cold air swept over me, and I shivered. I placed my hand on the doorknob, which felt unnaturally cold. "Lily?" I called out hesitantly. No response. Just the faint echo of my voice fading into the dark. I turned the knob slowly, holding my breath. The door creaked open, revealing a small room bathed in shadows. The air was thick, charged with a palpable tension. That's when I saw it. A dark shape huddled in the corner, shivering and mumbling. "Who's there?" I whispered, stepping inside. My heart raced, the fear of the unknown pressing down on me. The figure slowly turned, and I nearly gasped. It wasn't Lily. I stumbled back as the realization hit me. The thing in the corner was familiar, but not in a comforting way. It was a reflection of my own worst fears, and it had my eyes. Before I could react, the room erupted with whispers, swirling around me like a storm. The walls seemed to close in, and I knew I had to escape. But the moment I turned to flee, the door slammed shut behind me, locking me in. Now the whispers turned sinister, and all at once, I realized I was not just trapped in this room. I was trapped in my own mind. The air grew heavy around me, almost suffocating. I glanced at the figure still huddled in the corner, its eyes locked onto mine, refusing to blink. I felt my throat tighten as the whispers rose and fell in a chaotic rhythm, drowning out everything else. They twisted my thoughts, pulling me deeper into my fears. "Get away from me!" I yelled, trying to break free from the haze. The sound bounced off the walls, but the figure didn't flinch. Instead, it slowly crawled closer, its movements jerky and unnatural. I pressed my back against the door, struggling to breathe, knowing I couldn't let that thing touch me. As it drew nearer, I caught a glimpse of my own features marred by despair. It was me, but twisted in ways I didn't want to understand. I felt a surge of nausea, the room spinning as the whispers crescendoed into a wailing chorus. "Help me!" echoed in my mind, overlapping with the voice from the hall. I needed to think. I forced myself to breathe deeply, focusing on the bracelet still clutched in my hand. Its warmth seemed to thrum against my palm, somehow grounding me. I thought of Lily, the way she had reached out to me, her urgency barely contained. If there was any chance of finding her, I couldn't lose myself here. "Stay back!" I shouted again, pushing away from the door. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged past the figure toward a window that loomed in the far wall. The whispers quieted for a moment as I grasped the ledge. I banged on the glass, my breath fogging up the surface, but it was too high to reach. Just as I turned back, the figure lunged at me, the room vibrating with the force of our collision. I stumbled, falling to the floor. The whispers screamed now, each syllable sharp like knives. I crawled backward, desperate to put space between us. Then, in a moment of sheer instinct, I raised my hand. The bracelet glowed faintly, pulsing against the dark energy that filled the room. "Please!" I shouted. "Get away!" As if in response, the figure recoiled, screeching like it was being pulled away by an unseen force. I took the opportunity to scramble to my feet and dart toward the door. My heart raced as I fumbled for the knob, but it was locked tight, and panic threatened to overwhelm me. That's when the whispers changed again. They formed words, overlapping, frantic. "Find the key, you must find the key." I gritted my teeth and turned back to the now motionless figure, taking a shaky step closer. "What key? What do you want?" It hesitated, as if weighing my question. Then, to my horror, it pointed out toward the shadows behind me. I followed its gaze, dread settling in my stomach. The whispers twisted into laughter, and I could feel the darkness gathering, an impending storm ready to break. Then everything went dark. I stumbled, the darkness swallowing me whole, and I felt the floor drop out beneath my feet. When I came to, I was sprawled on the cold floor of the hospital hallway, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. It was as though I had been violently ejected from that suffocating room. Shaking off disorientation, I pushed myself up, heart pounding in my chest. The blaring silence felt both peaceful and unsettling, a soft counterpoint to the chaos that had gripped me moments before. I glanced around, the corridor emptier than before. Hypersensitive, I waited for the echoes of whispers to tighten around me again, but there was nothing, just the unyielding hum of lights above, casting a sterile glow. I could still feel the weight of the dark energy lingering in my bones, rattled from the encounter. Where had Lily gone? Had I truly escaped whatever lurked within the madness? Scrambling to my feet, I realized the teddy bear was now no longer in my grasp but rather laying off to the side of the hallway, as if waiting for me. Lily, I whispered to myself, recalling the warm pressure of urgency in her voice. I needed to leave now. Yet, the hospital felt different. Every flickering light morphed the shadows on the walls into grotesque shapes that twisted as I walked. Driven by an instinct I scarcely understood, I hurried toward the main exit, the cool tile underfoot feeling inexplicably slick, as if coated in lingering dread. But then I felt it a cold breeze, creeping up the back of my neck, prickling my skin. I chanced to look back, heart racing, expecting to see something sinister lurking. Nothing emerged, yet I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched, as if the hallways themselves were sentient, keeping me prisoner with each step. The emergency exit, my salvation, loomed ahead, flickering in the dim light like a distant promise. As I approached, the cries resumed in bursts, sharper and more insistent. "Help me, Emily!" They struck like arrows to my heart. The voices were relentless, clawing at my mind, pushing me to turn around, searching for the source of their torment. But I forced myself to keep moving forward. Throwing a glance back at the shadows, I clasped the bracelet tightly in my fist, repeating silently, "I won't forget you." Finally reaching the door, I pushed it open. It creaked ominously, a threshold between two worlds. As I stepped onto the pavement outside, the cool night air enveloped me, washing over my clammy skin like a baptism. I paused, taking in the stars twinkling above, the hum of the city night far removed from the chaos I'd just fled. Freedom came with a heavy dose of guilt, an unshakable burden settling deep in my chest. Had I left behind something I could have saved, or was running my only choice? Over the next few weeks, the ghost of the hospital haunted my thoughts. I moved away from the city, far from St. James, trying to reset the clock of my life, but the weight of unanswered questions remained. What had truly happened in there? Was it real, or had it just been the exhaustion of late-night shifts and the stress of school? I still think about the little girl in the pale dress, the names stitched into those toys, and that twisted reflection of myself. I never returned to that hospital, yet every time I pass a building that feels too empty or too quiet, I wonder if the whispers have found someone else. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if my neighbor is still there, if those things still happen. But mostly I try not to think about it.